Right, marking for this Peter limited question. This one here was out of 40 odd, I think. Let's just try and remember. 45 marks, right? And once again, we had the PBT note, and I would think that for each of these descriptions, you would get a half. So in terms of the descriptions, a half, 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 and then for your finance lease, the T's and C's, like last time, I think with 3 in total, recon of the minimum lease payments, minimum lease payments interest to their present values. Oops, that I left out. It would say present values. And 1 year, 225, and total. I think here they'd give you current, non-current. Here they'd give you current, non-current. And the rest would be calculations. So that's a total of, I should have done all those in purple, let's say, just so we can differentiate them. Let's go, I'll do the others in purple. There we go. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 and a half, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and a half. So let's make it 15 for descriptions. Okay, so descriptions or presentation, you're going to get 15 marks. All right, and then we will mark the actual number crunch. So starting off with the profit before tax note, we had the government grant income realized, and there let's go to the note where we did the workings and see how they would have awarded that. So what we got there was the income realized in the current year was sort of X minus Y, where that was a function of, so that's a hell of a lot. It's going to be 195 minus 15% was to get the 165,750 times 12 over 60. That's 2 marks for the 33,150. And then for adjusting the 8875, that was literally taking the 195 and working out the realization of that versus the 165 and working out the realization of that. That gave you 875. And the difference between those two gave us the deferred income realized in the current year. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marks, it looks like, for that number over there. Five marks. For the sale and leaseback income realized, that was working 1E, and we did that over there, okay, where it was the 10.2, and the 10.2 was the difference between 850 given, all right, and the 839,800, which I'll give you marks for just now. So the difference between those two, and then we realized that 10.2 times 1 over 3 times 8 over 12, so 1, 2.5 marks for that. Right, for our depreciation expense, we had the 2 bits. So on the property, plant and equipment note, it was our opening balance, which was the cost, a half, times 18 over 60. And then it was the 865 no, I beg your pardon, let me just correct that, sorry. The depreciation for the current year was 928,200 times 4 over 60 essentially, and I'll award those marks for the accumulated depreciation just now. And the current year's figure was 865 times 8 over that. So that's 4 marks for the depreciation charge. And then for the interest expense, Right, first of all, we needed our inputs, okay, of that, and that. And then for period 1 amort, okay, so it was period 1 on its own amort, you had to work out the interest. Right, that was the first part of the calculation. So that was worth 1, 2, let's call it 3. And then we took the balance at that date, if you remember correctly, and we worked out interest at 13% for 4 over 12 months. Okay, so in total, that's worth 4.5. So that gives us 3, 4, 8, 9, 16 marks for that profit before tax note. For the PP&E note, we've got the opening balance at cost, which was 1/2 less the accumulated depreciation, which would have been 1/2 and 1/2. Okay, so this is worth 1. That was worth 1.5. The depreciation figures I've given you, so what I'll give you here is 1/2 for transferring that. For the reval, I will give you 1 mark. For the initial direct costs capitalized, I will give you 1 mark. And then I've already given you marks for the depreciation, so another 1/2 over there. Your closing balance at cost less accumulated depreciation, let's go with 1/2. And then for saying that this asset is encumbered, we'll give you 1. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 marks for the number crunch on the property, plant and equipment. Right, for your finance lease, the number crunch there, you can see that's going to be quite something. So we had 1/2 for the year 1 and 1/2 for the minimum lease payments in the next 2 to 5 years. Then the interest was periods 2 to 3 amort, find their interest, 4 to 6 amort, find their interest. And that's probably where I would have left it. But then remember I said to you what we needed to do was calculate the accruals. So last year's accrual would have been the balance times the interest rate times 2 over 12. This year's accrual, the balance times the interest rate times 2 over 12. Okay, so that's also 1.5. And then I think just a 1/2 mark for carrying that forward to the next year. I think they might give you a 1/2 for totaling all the total columns up. I find that extraordinary, but I'm sure that's probably what they would have given you. So marks wise there, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 marks in total for the number crunch on the finance lease. For the deferred income, okay, the 10,200 I've already given you marks for, so let's say that would just be 1/2, and then for the balance being the non-current portion, that would be 1/2. And then I would imagine you had to get that balance, so less what was realized. Let's give you the 10 minus what was realized so far. That's what the balance is made up of. So 1, 2, 3, 3 marks for the number crunch there. And then finally, as far as the government grant was concerned, we have to show the current and non-current portion, where the current portion is 1/6, is a half. And then how did we get there? Well, it was our opening balance, right, less what we repaid, less what was realized in the current year. I've given you those marks. I'm not going to give you the workings marks again. And then for the non-current portion, let's give you 1 for that. So for the number crunch there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Let's call it 4.5 for the government grant. All right, that was it. So let's see, as far as the number crunch is concerned, I'll just add that up. We've got 4.5 plus 3 plus 10 plus 8 plus 16 gives us 41 So I've got for calculations 41, and then for the presentation part, I think we said it was, let's just add it up again, we said it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-ish. Let's make that a maximum of 10. So we've got 51 marks there. It looks like I'm over by quite a bit because it was out of 45. So sometimes they do that. I probably was a little bit generous there. Sometimes they do that, and you will see then they will say limited to a maximum of 45. Okay. Not that we often have to limit it to the maximum. But once again, I hope I've given you a pretty good idea of, of how you need to present the answer in order to get the marks that they're going to be dishing out for you.